Stablecoins on Bitcoin? Well, some people are pitching it as the next big step. They say it could save the bond market, shore up the dollar, and make Bitcoin more useful. But peel back the wrapping and the story looks very different. Today, we're going to take a closer look at that argument and ask what really happens if stablecoins move onto Bitcoin rails. The pitch goes like this. Stablecoins digitize the dollar, making it easier to move and settle in real time. If those stablecoins are backed by U.S. Treasuries, then more stablecoins mean more Treasury demand. And what better place to host them than on Bitcoin, the most secure settlement network in the world? From there, the conclusion follows. Stablecoins on Bitcoin are good for America and good for Bitcoin. That isn't my argument. It comes from an article by Juan Galt in Bitcoin Magazine. And while I think it's important to present that case fairly, I also think it deserves a much closer look. But before we do, if you find value in videos like these, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, then you'll find some links in the description. There was an article by Juan Galt in Bitcoin Magazine on Saturday that was titled, Stablecoins, Genius Act Paves Way for Bitcoin to Dominate Global Infrastructure. And that prompted me to make this video. What follows is my response to that article, and I want to take a closer look at the logic behind it and whether it actually holds up. First, let's take a look at the first assertion of the pitch, that stablecoins digitize the dollar. Outside of a mere handful of cash transactions, most of the money we spend is through ACH transfers or credit card transactions. Nearly every dollar already exists only as ones and zeros in the banking system. Now, to be fair, the current SWIFT system and international settlement in general with currency is expensive. It takes a lot of time. So perhaps stablecoin rails, which already exist, and we'll get into that in a minute, would increase the speed of international settlement with fiat currencies. And even with that in mind, wrapping dollars in a blockchain token doesn't suddenly create new demand. It's just the same money, but in a shinier package. The next argument is that stablecoins could help create demand for U.S. Treasuries. Even if tokenized dollars did move Treasuries faster, it doesn't solve the underlying problem. America's debt problem is structural. You don't fix a $1 trillion annual interest bill by slapping a shiny new label on the same IOUs. That's not innovation. That's the same shell game they used for the housing market before it all came crashing down in 2008. And Galt suggests that new customers for the dollar would come in the form of people who otherwise didn't have access to it before. But that demand would be weak and short-lived, and worse, it distracts them from taking a look at a far superior money. So, yeah, we're selling the same garbage product, but hey, it has a great new look. But it's blatantly dishonest. Why would you offer them dollars on Bitcoin when you could offer them Bitcoin on Bitcoin? And even if you buy the idea that stablecoins could somehow shore up the dollar, why would you need Bitcoin's platform to do it? You don't. Ethereum and other platforms were explicitly built for tokens and financial instruments. They already host stablecoins. And as much as you know that I'm not a fan of Ethereum and other POS platforms, and yes, I said that right, my take is this. Let fiat systems run on fiat rails. Bitcoin and fiat are diametrically opposed ideas. One doesn't improve the other by forcing an association between them. It's worse. You sacrifice the stronger one by saddling it under the bloated weight of the weaker one. But what do I mean by that? What happens if you actually do push stablecoins onto Bitcoin rails? Bitcoin was never designed to carry fiat. Not only was it not meant to carry it, it was designed to counteract its inherent corruption. So it's frustrating to me to see stablecoins being pitched as a gift to Bitcoin, a way to make it look more practical, more versatile, more acceptable. And let's be honest here. They're not selling this idea to seasoned Bitcoiners. They're selling it to newcomers, people who don't yet understand what the dangers are. But just like every other Trojan horse, the problem here isn't what's promised on the outside, it's what's hidden inside. Because once you bring stablecoins onto Bitcoin, you're not just getting tokens. You're importing the whole apparatus of fiat, compliance, surveillance, blacklists, and control. And once that apparatus gets in, it's impossible to get it back out again. Now, here's what struck me while I was reading the Galt article, And it may seem like a digression, but hear me out for a minute. Galt never actually says how these stablecoins would run on Bitcoin. The mechanics aren't mentioned at all. But if you've followed the debates inside Bitcoin over the past few months, you'll know there's been one consistent push from the same circles promoting ordinals, NFTs, and now stablecoins. Expand op return. That proposed change, warned against by such prominent names as Luke Dasher, Michael Saylor, and Nick Szabo, would allow you to insert an exponentially increased amount of arbitrary non-monetary data into Bitcoin transactions. And expanding that ability has long been a wedge between Bitcoin monetary purists and those who want to turn Bitcoin into something more like, well, Ethereum. So when I read this article, I couldn't help but wonder if that's the real subtext. On the surface, it's a case for stablecoins helping the dollar and Bitcoin. But underneath, it reads a lot like a backhanded push for op return expansion, without ever really saying it out loud. Bitcoin didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built as the culmination of decades of failed experiments, things like DigiCash and BitGold, where people tried to create digital money but couldn't solve the core problem of trust. Well, Satoshi solved that problem. He combined existing tools, public key cryptography, peer-to-peer networking, proof of work, and the block reward incentive system into something entirely new, a monetary system that runs without control. And that's the breakthrough. The blockchain wasn't created as a blank canvas for whatever tokens people wanted to stick on it. It was a component of Bitcoin itself. Its purpose was singular: to keep the ledger of Bitcoin secure, decentralized, and resistant to manipulation. Bitcoin doesn't need to be dressed up with fiat wrappers or weighed down with the baggage of debt-based money. Its strength comes from what it already is: incorruptible, decentralized, and free from control. Stablecoins on Bitcoin don't make Bitcoin stronger, they compromise it. They risk turning what was once the hardest money ever created into just another system bent to serve fiat. And that's why it matters here. Using Bitcoin to carry fiat isn't innovative, it's corruptive. It's like adding modern finishing touches to a Rembrandt. Well, you might think you've improved it, but in truth, you will have vandalized the greatest monetary innovation in history.